Hey, you! So, I need to ask you a few questions for the school newspaper.
Okay.
What do you think of the recent rapid increase of upper-crust GOP politicians being diagnosed with pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis?
What?
You don't know what pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis is?
No.
What an idiot.
Hi, I'm Amrita, and this is Taylor. Obviously, that was not how a journalist should conduct themselves. Here we are going to walk you through all the steps of being a student journalist so that you can have all the resources to succeed in your own years as a journalist.
But if you're in a journalism class, you're at the heartbeat of the school, and you can do a whole lot.
Well, I would definitely say for young people that are getting involved in journalism that they have to have the right attitude and the right approach, like what their purpose is. I think, especially in America, but not just in America, we have this idea that journalism is like, Us Weekly or Entertainment Tonight and following celebrities and things like that. And to me, that isn't really journalism. Journalism is about investigating important political and social issues that need to be explored so that human beings can make meaningful decisions in their lives about how they want to vote or programs they want to support and to educate the public. It isn't to find out which celebrity is pregnant or whatever. So I think that having the right attitude is really important.
The first step to writing a news article is to find the topic.
Good stories are the most important thing. Because this paper's been around since the school started, there's very few stories that we haven't covered. And while each class, obviously, there's this overlap, and stories can get boring. You can learn to be competent in the writing and the interviewing techniques. And other than that, you got to make sure you record every interview you do. But if you don't have a good story, nobody's going to read it. And that's the bottom line. If you don't have a good story, nobody cares.
So, what's newsworthy? For a student newspaper like the Raider Review, you should always want to relate your topic back to school.
So, for example, while a story about congressional budget cuts might be inappropriate, how those budget cuts affect our school and what students think of the cuts would be appropriate.
Exactly. While you're at ERHS, always be aware of what's going on in the news outside and inside the school, so that you can come up with relevant article ideas. A good way to do this is to listen to the announcements, check your PGCPS email, and to always be on alert for what other students are saying.
When you're thinking of what article to write, ask yourself questions like these. Is it worth my time? Did it happen recently? Will it have bad consequences if I publish it? If it's controversial, would the controversy be worth it? Does it tie back to the school?
Now, let's show you some examples.
Hey, I just found this overseas Twitter. I'm retweeting this.
That doesn't sound like a good idea. Don't do that. You should think of other articles that relate to teachers.
Okay, Brittany. I have a great idea. You'll see.
Okay, but just don't do anything stupid. If you need ideas, I can
No, it's
help
fine.
you. I've got too many ideas on my plate right now.
It's fine.
There's an opinion piece I want to do on the pros and
You don't
cons
need
of
to
the
help
reverse
me.
classroom teaching technique.
I got it.
And another piece on student opinion on Michelle Obama's initiatives that affect the vending machines in our schools. And oh yeah, a student poll about teenage sleep cycles and stress.
Oh my gosh,
And
oh my
whether school
gosh.
operating hours should be accordingly shifted and
Brittany! It's okay. I won't do anything stupid. It's actually great. I got an idea now. I'm not even going to tell the editors my plan.
Dibujos transformaban el invierno en gran verano. Papá me regaló bajo mi insistencia un juego que trataba de partir la solvencia, pero en el patio hicieron la competencia. Fue cuando sentí mi primera impotencia. 1970 y 1970 y 1970 1977. No me diga no, que no lo presiento.
I can't stand Miss Isabel because she never showers and her classroom reeks. I never learn anything and Mr. Hammersmith sucks. I cheat in that class anyway to get back at him. How can you write that? Why would the students agree to have you say that?
I know it's terrible. but that's what makes it a good story. And the students asked for anonymity, and I told them I would give it to them, but I couldn't there.
This is terrible. How could you write, all of these students are right, there are rampant teaching errors happening at Roosevelt, and these teachers must have salary cuts?
But this is what students want to read. We'll get 1 million hits and we'll go viral. And administration can't stop us. There's freedom of the press.
En la cordillera que miraba la salida apretada militar de paso monótono por después y trémulos uniformes de poco.
So, as you can see, the student made a number of errors here, the first of which was a terrible story idea. Writing about which teachers are the best and worst is not a good article topic. Students can be prone to saying idiotic things about their teachers, things that may hurt the teacher's image and are in fact quite false. The whole piece might cause a paper to lose credibility and would be a huge embarrassment to the entire staff.
Additionally, the piece doesn't do anything constructive. It just hurts the feelings and reputations of the teachers. The opinion piece that the student proposed about the pros and cons of the reversed classroom teaching strategy would be much more constructive. A good example of this would be to discuss how the Physics 1 and Physics 2 classes at the school utilize a progressive system where students learn physics at home through online videos and then practice in class.
The other pieces that the student that I played proposed were similarly great ideas. Student opinion polls or pressing matters are always great ideas, as are polls that reflect significant trends and issues among students. The bad student journalist was on the right track by keeping up with Twitter. However, many things on Twitter are simply not newsworthy.
And then the student didn't consider the advice of her editor.
And lied about anonymity.
And then treated our newspaper like a gossip column.
And thought that we have complete freedom of the press. In reality, Supreme Court cases have set limits on the rights of student journalists at school newspapers. Now let's teach you a little bit about article and interview preparation.
You can't write your way to a good story if you haven't done the research that you need. A lot of times I think young journalists, they go into an interview and they're not very well prepared. You need to know the answer to almost every question you're going to ask before you ask it, just like a good lawyer. If you don't, you need to know your subject back and forth before you go in and interview anybody. Otherwise, you're not going to ask the right questions. You're never going to get a second chance to go back there. So do your homework before you go in there and know what you're talking about.
Journalism forces you to see things from multiple perspectives to present news and information. Remember, good journalism is highly dependent on a stranger's contribution. A finished article may be a piece of writing you wrote, but the material is a result of the interview and research you conduct.
Once you've decided on an article that's newsworthy, it's important to thoroughly plan your article. Planning articles includes choosing an angle, deciding on interviewees, and listing possible questions. A well-planned article is not only easier to write, but also makes your writing more timely.
Let's go over the first step of planning an article, choosing an angle. An angle of a story is the approach the journalist takes for the story. This technique helps to make the article clear and focused.
Once you've chosen an angle, you can move on to the next step, deciding on interviewees. Choosing interviewees is very important in writing an article since much of the content is based on what information they give you.
Sometimes you will have specific people that you need to interview, such as the principal or girls soccer coach, but other times you will have to plan to interview people. The rule of thumb is to have at least 3 sources per article.
Make sure that when you're figuring out who to interview, you plan to get a diverse range of people. In student opinion polls especially, plan to interview students of different racial backgrounds, genders, sexual orientations, levels of academic rigor, and socioeconomic backgrounds. By getting a diverse range of sources and sources with different perspectives, you minimize bias.
Remember, though that some of these things like socioeconomic backgrounds, sexual orientation, shouldn't typically be asked about. The point is just to get a diverse range of students as possible. This means not interviewing your friends.
Here are some examples. For a story about the boys basketball team winning county championships, possible interviewees could be players on the team, the coach, and a student who attended the game. Then you get perspectives from all sides of the story. For a story about student opinion on a recent news event, you'll have to plan to approach random students in the hallway. Again, don't stay in your comfort zone and just interview your friends.
After you have decided on possible interviewees, you can move on to the final step in preparing for an article, listing possible questions to ask. Good reporting means answering the questions that need to be answered, including any questions that the reader might have. So be sure to ask open-ended questions, or questions that require the interviewee to give more meaningful answers.
Remember, familiarizing yourself with the background of a topic can help you as well to come up with better questions to ask the interviewee.
In some cases, you might just have to wing it in the interview and make some questions up as you go along. This could happen. For example, if the interviewee isn't very responsive to your questions, or if the interviewee is of a different perspective than you originally thought. Even in such circumstances, though, whatever preparation you will have will help you think on the fly. Now for the part that daunts most people.
Interviewing.
If you're like, oh, I'm too shy to go up and talk to someone I don't know, well, then you're putting yourself before your story. You know, you're putting your own needs ahead of the needs of the people that you're supposed to be serving. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with going up to someone and introducing yourself and saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this.
There's a real art to questioning, how to, if you're trying to find out something, like say you go to the principal and you're writing a story about an issue, a decision he made, you should know, do your homework, what's the county policy on this, you know, what exactly do you want to find out from the principal. And part of the questioning thing is putting people in a comfort zone too. So lead with easier questions that build up to your final, you know, what you really want to find out. And just, you know, there's a way to word questions. The same as the, you know, way to write an essay, there's a way to word a question. How do you ask a difficult question? Mm-hmm. And just teaching students, like throwing something in like people say or people want to know. Then that way it's like it's coming from someone else and not you, but it's really you.
You got to record it. You got to record it because you can't write everything down. You're not a professional journalist, so write everything down. I mean, not write it, record everything and write as much down as possible. Don't ask leading questions. Ask questions, wait for a response, and practice asking follow-up questions, and maybe try to anticipate a follow-up question. And that's the best thing to do. If you're asking a teacher, like, what do you think about students and grades in school? You can assume that most teachers would say, well, I think grades should improve in school. So your follow-up question, like, well, in what way should they improve? Or can you give me specific about what you improve? Could you give me an example about what you improve? So you have that overarching question, and then you have follow-up questions that you can sort of lead to that helps get more in-depth with the interview.
Many new journalists worry about approaching their peers and teachers for an interview, but it's not as scary as it may seem. If you've properly planned your article, then you should have nothing to fear.
Let's check out an example of an interview.
Hey, I need to interview you for the school newspaper.
Okay.
What's your name?
Chrysanthemum Rosales.
Did you take the FAST test?
Yeah.
Which one?
Science.
Did you like it?
No.
Okay, thanks, bye.
Bye.
Whoa! There were several things wrong with that scene. Not even the very first question was the proper way to begin an interview.
As a student journalist, it's important to make it completely clear what your intention is. At the beginning of an interview, introduce yourself and make the interviewee feel comfortable. Remember, you're basically about to interrogate them. They won't respond well if they feel pressured.
Be sure that they know and understand what you're going to ask them about. Explain some background on your article topic without showing bias, of course. Then inquire on their thoughts and opinions.
Quite possibly the most critical part of interviewing is getting the interviewee's name and grade level. The journalists we showed not only disregarded the correct spelling of the interviewee's name, but also didn't even ask what their grade level was.
After asking for an interviewee's name, ask them to spell it, then read it back to them. Don't get lazy if their name is lengthy and complex. Keep reading it back until you spelled it correctly.
And don't forget to get their grade level. It helps readers identify the student, as well as helps you find variety in your interview. If you've noted that you've interviewed 3 seniors, then you know that it would be wise to interview students of other grade levels next.
If you're interviewing a teacher, ask what classes they teach. So Mrs. Ruoff, for example, would be AP English language teacher Mrs. Audrey Ruoff.
And all of these rules apply for photographs too. If you take a photo, make sure you have the name and grade level of each person in the photo, along with their permission for it to be published online and in print.
Once you have their name, it's time to implement your list of questions. The previous journalist asked too many close-ended questions. Close-ended questions can be answered simply answering yes or no.
It's difficult to get meaningful interviews when the interviewee doesn't have to elaborate on their answer. Ask open-ended questions, or questions that have to be answered in more than one word. Instead of, did you like testing? Ask, how did you feel about the test?
Don't stop asking questions when your pre-written list ends. You should be listening to your interviewee and adapting your questions to fit their answers. If they say something that is unclear to you, ask a follow-up question.
At the end of your interview, be sure to ask your subject if they would like to tell you anything more. You'd be surprised at what other details you can get from asking this. Now, let's see if these tips can help our journalists conduct a better interview.
Excuse me, can I interview you for the school newspaper?
Sure.
I'm going to interview you about the FAST test. Now, it's going to feature your name and your grade level, and it might be featured online on erhsradar.org or in the print edition of the Radar Review. is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Let's start. What's your name?
Chrysanthemum Rosales.
How do you spell that?
ChrysanthemusRosales.
I'm going to take notes, and you'll be recorded. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so did you take the FAST test that were administered last week?
Yes, I did.
Which one?
I took the science fast test.
How much class time did you miss due to these tests?
At least 3 periods.
How do you feel about the test?
I think that it's a little bit too long. I don't really like them, but if that's what the county needs to know what we're doing in school.
And how did you feel about missing class because of these tests?
I don't mind missing class, but not taking a test.
Okay. So to clarify, those 4 periods that you missed were in the morning?
There's only 3 really.
Okay.
And yes, I took the morning test.
Thank you so much for the interview. The article should be available soon at erhsradar.org. Make sure you look for it.
Thank you.
I think all writing, whether it's journalism or essay writing, is you write according to your purpose. Like if you're writing an editorial, you have a whole lot more freedom than who, what, when, where, why. The straight news story is to know your purpose and then adjust your writing to fit your purpose. And you know, don't be afraid of other people reading your writing. I think there's too many students that are overly concerned about what others think.
One of the most obvious parts of being a student journalist is writing articles.
While it may sound simple, writing articles is more complicated than just including the necessary information. You want your story to be interesting and eloquent, not just some informational words slapped down on the paper. But first, before you can dive into making your story sound amazing, you must know how to organize it.
Organize your article using the inverted pyramid. This means putting the most crucial and important information at the beginning of the article and ending with the least important information.
The lead sentence of articles should start off with the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. Afterwards should follow details secondary in importance, and eventually the least important details at the end.
Let's look at an example of a good lead. The following sentence is an example of the real lead from a Radar Review article.
On Wednesday, April 22nd, close to 30 Eleanor Roosevelt High School students and 1 teacher participated in the Hijab Experience, an event that, according to the permission slip that students were required to fill out to participate, was to allow an understanding of the hijab's purpose and clear the misconception around Islam and the headscarf, rather than to encourage the wearing of the hijab. The event was hosted by the Muslim Student Association.
This lead answers almost all of the 5 W's. The who is ERHS students, a teacher, and the Muslim Student Association. The what is the Hijab Experience. The why is to allow an understanding of the hijab's purpose and clear the misconception around Islam and the headscarf. And the when is Wednesday, April 22nd. Although the where is not specifically included in the first sentence, the next sentences in the article soon reveal that the event took place around the school.
The lead would have been more complete with this tidbit of information. However, it is also important to balance clarity with detail, so as not to make the lead too jumbled.
Of course, there are exceptions to this rule. Sometimes you'll find that articles start off more stylistically, with a particular striking detail. Such articles may have their leads a few sentences down instead of the first sentence. However, don't worry about this until you've got the basics down. This is mostly for more complicated articles, such as opinion pieces, detailed student features, not news articles.
When you are writing, don't obscure facts. Make sentences easy to understand and avoid excessive flourishes. Don't say those who teach numbers, division, multiplication, and other modes of arithmetic means. If you can, just say math teachers. While it's important for your articles to be well written, this doesn't mean making them excessively complicated.
Make your paragraphs short. Unlike in your English or other classes, there are many times when you'll have paragraphs of only 1 or 2 sentences.
Additionally, put punctuation inside quotations.
Be careful also with your use of superlative words, such as best and most. Although people often use these words in casual speech, they can carry unintended and incorrect meanings when you use them in journalism.
Besides having the relevant information, the article also needs to be interesting to the audience. Sure, you can have the most factually correct and proofread article ever, but if it's boring to read, no one will want to read it, and it won't have much of an impact.
Inject some flavor into your writing by using more interesting and descriptive, but still clear and concise words. For example, infuriated might be a better choice than mad, and scarlet might be a better choice than red.
Overall, though, the two best things to do to improve your writing are to practice writing and to read voraciously. We cannot stress enough how important it is to read the news from professional sources, such as the New York Times and the Washington Post, not only so that you can know what's going on, but so that you can get a feel of what good writing is, so that you yourself can become a better writer.
We've now touched on some of the most key parts of writing your article, but there are, of course, more. In your time here at the Radar Review, you might want to write op-eds, movie, music, and restaurant reviews, or cover an event with a camera as a photojournalist.
There's still a ton of more information for you to learn about these subject areas that would take a whole course to explain. The most important thing that you should remember, though, as you go about your time as a student journalist is to always be ready to learn, take advice from other people with experience, and to read and write as much as you can to make your articles as stellar as they can be.
Now let's move on to the final step, fact-checking, editing, and publishing.
Once your article is fully written, there are 2 final steps before you hit the publish button. That would be fact check and edit.
In the words of Miley Cyrus, nobody's perfect, which is why it's important to make sure that someone else, in this case an editor, overlooks your work and fact checks it.
Now, don't be worried. Your article will not be completely taken apart, just revised a little.
Here are some things to keep in mind while your work is being edited.
Keep an open mind. Although you may feel your article is in tip-top shape, there are probably some spelling or grammatical errors that may have been overlooked.
Feel free to speak up. If you think that there's an important point or quote that your editor has deleted, let them know. They won't yell at you about it. After all, it is your article. However, don't be afraid of criticism.
There are also things to keep in mind if you are the editor. Make sure that while you are editing an article, you don't crush the writer. Provide creative criticism to the writer and balance any negative or critical feedback with positive feedback so that the writer will know what to do correctly next time.
Edit fastidiously. Don't just assume that all names in the article are correct and accurately spelled. You should always check.
A quick and easy way to check the names of students and faculty at ERHS is with the PGCPS Gmails. All students and faculty in Prince George's County should be registered in the county Gmail.
You should always make sure that the writer has listed references. When writing a review, for example, be sure if you claim an album was #1 on a chart, to say which specific chart, which website or source provided you with that information, and how recent that information is.
While the editor should fact-check the article, the writer of the article should also have double and triple checked all facts before submitting the article for review. Remember that as journalists, you have responsibilities, and when you publish incorrect facts, those actions can have large consequences.
Exactly. Be responsible.
As both an editor and a writer, you will learn a lot about the rules of the English language, how to structure articles, and how to write with good style. Going through this, remember to be positive and open to learning new things.
Okay, now we've given you an introduction to all the basic rules of journalism. We hope you've enjoyed it.
Good luck! I'm sorry. Hey, Mr. Good luck!
Don't say that to anyone. Oh no, it's on film though. But
I feel like a